Life appeared as flawless as the tailored suits she wore. Success came naturally to her, and she was celebrated not just for her financial acumen, but for her ability to read people with surgical precision. Yet even the sharpest eyes can miss what lurks in the shadows. Tonight, Evelyn hosted an intimate anniversary dinner for her 10th year of marriage to Victor, her charming, soft-spoken husband who had stood beside her through her meteoric rise. The party was small by design, just a collection of close friends, trusted colleagues, and family members. The venue, their sprawling home perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, gleamed with candlelight and polished silver. To everyone present, Evelyn's life was a portrait of perfection. Wealth, power, and love intertwined seamlessly. But Evelyn felt a peculiar unease. It was nothing she could articulate, just a faint sense that the painting of her life had begun to crack. It started a few weeks earlier when Victor had grown distant. He blamed work stress, dismissing her concerns with a kiss and a smile. But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling. He spent more time on his phone, stepping outside to take calls, his laughter muffled behind closed doors. Then there were the whispers in her office, small, seemingly innocuous remarks from her executive assistant about strange coincidences with certain investments and dealings. The dinner progressed flawlessly. Victor was the picture of charm, entertaining their guests with anecdotes and his signature humor. Evelyn floated through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries and deftly maneuvering through conversations like the consummate host she was. Yet her analytical mind catalogued subtle discrepancies. Victor and their close friend Daniel, her company's CFO, shared glances that lingered too long. Her younger sister Tessa, who had recently taken on a role in Nexus's marketing department, avoided Evelyn's gaze altogether. As the evening wore on, Evelyn retreated to the patio, seeking solace in the rhythmic crash of the waves below. She nursed a glass of wine, her thoughts swirling. She thought back to a moment that had gnawed at her all week, when she overheard a hushed conversation between Victor and Daniel during a late-night call. The words timing and shares had caught her attention, but when she asked Victor about it, he dismissed it as boring finance talk. Evelyn wasn't convinced. She had built an empire by trusting her instincts, and they were screaming at her now. "Thinking too hard again, love?" Victor's voice broke through her reverie. He approached her with his signature grin, but something about it felt off. "Just taking a moment," she replied, masking her unease. "It's been a wonderful evening." "It has," he agreed, sliding an arm around her waist. 10 years. Feels like yesterday, doesn't it? Evelyn turned to face him, searching his eyes for something, anything, that could anchor her. Instead, she found a faint flicker of something unfamiliar. Guilt, perhaps? Or was it fear? "I suppose it does," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing within her. "But time changes people." Victor chuckled, a sound that felt too forced. "Not us, though. We're unshakable." As he kissed her forehead, Evelyn's phone buzzed on the table beside her. She picked it up, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the notification tag. Her security system's GPS tracker had sent a location alert. Earlier that day, Victor had mentioned running an errand, something about picking up a surprise for their anniversary. The GPS, however, told a different story. His car had been parked at a local park for hours. "Who are you meeting at the park today?" she asked abruptly, holding up her phone. The question sliced through the air like a blade. Victor froze for the briefest moment, but it was enough. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, recovering quickly. Too quickly. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "I've always believed honesty is the foundation of any relationship. Don't make me dig for the truth." Victor raised his hands in mock surrender, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "It was nothing, Evie. I wanted to surprise you, that's all. You'll ruin it if you keep prying." Evelyn forced a laugh, but her mind was already spinning. "Fine. But you know me, Victor. I hate surprises." As he walked back inside, Evelyn stared at his retreating figure, her heart pounding. The cracks were no longer subtle. Something was deeply wrong, and Evelyn was determined to uncover it. What Victor didn't know was that Evelyn had been tracking him for weeks, piecing together fragments of deception. What she had yet to uncover was the scale of the betrayal and the devastating personal and professional consequences that would follow. Evelyn wasn't one to let her emotions cloud her judgment. She had built her career on cold, calculated decisions, and now she applied the same discipline to her personal life. The anniversary dinner had served its purpose, not as a celebration of love, but as the catalyst for her suspicions. The following day, Evelyn immersed herself in unraveling the tangled web Victor seemed to have spun. Her first move was subtle, leveraging her position to gather data without drawing attention. Evelyn had always insisted on full transparency within Nexus Ventures, requiring that all transactions, meetings, and deals be logged meticulously. Now, she turned that system inward. She instructed her assistant Lauren to provide her with every financial report that involved Victor's dealings, especially those intersecting with Daniel, her CFO. Lauren hesitated at first, sensing Evelyn's uncharacteristic urgency. "Are you sure you want to dig into this, Evelyn? Victor is your... my husband, yes," Evelyn interrupted, her voice sharp. "That's precisely why I want clarity. This is strictly confidential." Lauren nodded and left to compile the reports. As Evelyn waited, she reflected on the strange shift in her life over the past few months. Victor had always been her anchor, the steady presence she could rely on when the pressures of the corporate world became too much. Now he felt like a stranger, his sudden interest in financial jargon, topics he'd never cared about before, his clandestine phone calls, and now this vague excuse about surprises didn't add up. When Lauren returned with a stack of documents, Evelyn delved in, methodically combing through the details. It didn't take long before anomalies began to surface. Small, seemingly inconsequential transactions tied to a shell company named Vortex Holdings appeared repeatedly. The amounts were modest at first, but they escalated over time. What raised Evelyn's alarm was the fact that Daniel's name was attached to several of these transfers. Her mind raced as she pieced together the connections. Vortex Holdings had no legitimate business history, yet it was receiving funds from multiple Nexus Ventures accounts. Evelyn cross-referenced these transactions with Victor's calendar. The dates aligned with the days he claimed to be working late, or meeting friends. Evelyn's analytical prowess kicked into high gear. She spent hours mapping out the network of transactions, realizing that the shell company wasn't just a siphoning mechanism, it was a front for something larger. What unsettled her most was the involvement of her younger sister, Tessa. Evelyn hadn't noticed it before, but Tessa's recent promotion within the company coincided with Vortex Holdings' escalation in activity. That evening, Evelyn confronted Tessa under the guise of a casual sisterly chat. They met at a cozy cafe, the kind of place that felt too quaint for the brewing storm. As Tessa entered, Evelyn startled to a small cry. "Tessa," Evelyn began, swirling her coffee, "I've been meaning to ask, how are you finding your new role? I know marketing wasn't your first choice." Tessa shifted uncomfortably. "It's fine, a little overwhelming, but I'm managing." Evelyn smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I noticed you've been working closely with Daniel lately. What's that about?" Tessa hesitated, her fingers tightening around her mug. "Oh, it's nothing serious. Just some routine stuff." "Why?" Evelyn leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Because I don't believe in coincidences, Tessa. And your name keeps popping up in places it shouldn't." Tessa's face flushed. "I don't know what you're talking about, Evie." "Don't lie to me," Evelyn said, her voice a low, controlled whisper. "If you're involved in something that could damage this company, or this family, I need to know." Tessa's eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't say a word. Evelyn leaned back, her suspicions confirmed. Tessa was hiding something, but Evelyn needed more than a guilty look. She needed undeniable proof. The following week, Evelyn ramped up her investigation, turning her attention to Victor. She'd hired a private investigator to follow him discreetly, knowing she couldn't rely solely on her own efforts. The GPS tracker she'd placed in his car led her to more disturbing revelations. On a sunny Tuesday afternoon, Evelyn received a call from the investigator. "Mrs. Hart, your husband's movements are interesting. He's at the same park you mentioned last week, and he's not alone." Evelyn's heart pounded as she opened the live feed sent to her phone. There he was, Victor, sitting on a picnic blanket with a woman Evelyn didn't recognize. They laughed and leaned into each other with an intimacy that sent a cold wave of fury coursing through her veins. The investigator's voice broke through her thoughts. The woman's name is Isabel Lane. She's listed as an independent contractor for Nexus Ventures, marketing consultations, mostly. Evelyn clenched her fists. Isabel Lane, another thread in the growing web of deception. Isabel Warren Edward came to the front. Rather than confront Victor immediately, Evelyn decided to bide her time. Confrontation wouldn't solve anything. She needed to understand the full scope of his betrayal. Was it simply an affair, or was there more to it? The questions gnawed at her, as she meticulously documented every piece of evidence. A week later, Evelyn discovered the horrifying extent of the conspiracy. The transactions tied to Vortex Holdings weren't random. They were part of a larger scheme to siphon funds from Nexus Ventures while destabilizing the company's financial stability. Victor, Daniel, and Tessa were colluding to engineer a hostile takeover, with Isabel acting as a middleman to ensure the plan's execution. What stung the most wasn't the financial betrayal, it was the personal one. The people she trusted most, the ones she'd built her life and legacy with, were plotting against her. Evelyn sat in her office, staring at the damning evidence spread out before her. Rage boiled beneath her calm exterior, but she forced herself to think strategically. Confronting them would be easy, but it wouldn't give her the upper hand. Instead, she decided to play the long game. That weekend, Evelyn orchestrated a family dinner, inviting Victor, Tessa, and even Daniel. The atmosphere was deceptively warm, with laughter and casual conversation filling the room. Evelyn played the perfect hostess, never letting on that she knew their secrets. As dessert was served, Evelyn casually dropped a bombshell. "I've been reviewing some of our financials at Nexus. Fascinating stuff, really. It's amazing what patterns emerge when you dig deep enough." Victor stiffened, his fork pausing mid-air. Tessa avoided eye contact, while Daniel's smile faltered. Evelyn let the silence stretch, savoring their discomfort. "I've also hired a forensic accountant," she continued, her tone light but her words heavy. "I think it's important to ensure everything is in order, especially with the upcoming board meeting." Victor cleared his throat. "That's a good idea, Evie. Always thorough, aren't you?" "Oh," Evelyn smiled sweetly. "Always." The dinner ended without further incident, but Evelyn knew the seeds of panic had been sown. Now, it was only a matter of time before the web they'd spun began to unravel. This time, under her control. Evelyn's patience had always been her sharpest weapon. Over the next few weeks, she moved deliberately, operating under a guise of calm while carefully setting the stage for her next move. The betrayal had shaken her to the core, but it had also awakened something she hadn't felt in years: the unrelenting determination of a predator closing in on its prey. She began her retaliation by isolating her adversaries from their power sources. Victor, Tessa, and Daniel had operated under the assumption that Evelyn's trust blinded her, that she would never suspect those closest to her of orchestrating a coup. But Evelyn had the advantage now: knowledge, clarity, and leverage. Victor's betrayal cut the deepest, but Evelyn refused to let her emotions dictate her actions. She began by quietly dismantling his financial freedom. A quick review of their joint accounts revealed that Victor had been withdrawing large sums under the pretense of investments. Evelyn contacted her personal attorney and financial advisor, freezing all shared accounts and reallocating funds to her personal trusts. To ensure Victor remained unaware of her maneuvers, Evelyn maintained the facade of a loving wife. She still greeted him with a kiss in the mornings and listened to his stories about his day, all while secretly tracking his movements. The private investigator continued to provide updates, and Evelyn discovered that Victor had made several visits to a high-end jeweler, likely under the pretense of purchasing something for Isabel. Evelyn's countermeasure came in the form of a carefully crafted email sent from an anonymous account. The email contained screenshots of Victor's visits to the park with Isabel, his jewelry purchases, and a veiled warning: "Betrayal always comes at a cost. Choose wisely. Victor became visibly agitated in the days that followed, his usual confidence replaced by nervous glances and stammered excuses. Evelyn said nothing, her silence a calculated pressure that left him floundering. When he failed to break her tenor spell, she was more forceful than she needed to be. Tessa's involvement was perhaps the most surprising. Evelyn had always viewed her younger sister as inexperienced but well-meaning. Now she saw her for what she truly was, an opportunist. Tessa's recent promotion had placed her in charge of key marketing initiatives, giving her access to sensitive company data. Evelyn decided to exploit this. Using her authority as CEO, Evelyn called for an internal audit of all marketing campaigns, citing quality assurance as the reason. The audit uncovered irregularities in budgets overseen by Tessa, including inflated expenses and payments to freelance contractors that didn't exist. Evelyn quietly documented everything, knowing that Tessa's professional credibility was now hanging by a thread. During a casual lunch, Evelyn confronted Tessa indirectly. "You've been doing great work lately," she said, her tone warm. "But I noticed some discrepancies in the marketing budgets. Nothing major, probably just an oversight. I thought you'd want to be aware." Tessa's face turned pale and she stammered a response. "Oh, I'll look into that. I'm sure it's just a mistake." Evelyn smiled. "I'm sure it is. I'd hate for something small to escalate into a larger issue." The conversation left Tessa rattled, but Evelyn wasn't finished. She quietly reassigned Tessa's key accounts to other team members, framing it as a redistribution of workload. Tessa's influence within the company diminished almost overnight. Daniel had been a trusted ally for years, which made his betrayal sting almost as much as Victor's. Evelyn knew that Daniel was the linchpin of the conspiracy. Without his financial expertise, the scheme would collapse. She decided to dismantle him methodically. Evelyn's first step was to secure the board's loyalty. She began meeting with key board members individually, sharing her concerns about recent financial irregularities and subtly implicating Daniel without outright accusing him. By the time the next board meeting arrived, the seeds of doubt had already been planted. During the meeting, Evelyn presented her findings from the forensic audit she'd quietly commissioned. She highlighted the irregular transactions linked to Vortex Holdings, carefully omitting any mention of Victor or Tessa. Instead, she framed the issue as a breach of protocol, emphasizing the need for accountability at the highest levels. Daniel attempted to defend himself, but the evidence was damning. The board voted unanimously to suspend him, pending further investigation, effectively cutting off his access to company resources. As Daniel left the room, his usual composure replaced by visible panic, Evelyn felt a flicker of satisfaction. One piece of the puzzle had been removed. While Evelyn methodically dismantled her adversary's power, she also played a psychological game, keeping them off balance and paranoid. Victor's anonymous email was just the beginning. She sent similar messages to Tessa and Daniel, each tailored to exploit their individual fears. To Tessa: "Ambition is a double-edged sword. Be careful who you trust, or you may find yourself alone." To Daniel: "The higher you climb, the harder the fall. Consider this your warning." The cryptic messages sowed discord among the trio, making them distrustful of each other. Victor began questioning Tessa's loyalty, while Tessa suspected Daniel of exposing their scheme. The once tight alliance began to fracture under the weight of their paranoia. The tipping point came when Evelyn discovered a hidden clause in the Vortex Holdings contracts. The clause, buried in the fine print, named Victor as the primary beneficiary of the funds siphoned from Nexus Ventures. It was the final piece of evidence Evelyn needed to confirm that Victor wasn't just complicit, he was the mastermind. Rather than confronting him directly, Evelyn chose a more public stage. She arranged a meeting with the entire board of directors, framing it as a discussion about Nexus's future strategy. Victor, Daniel, and Tessa were all present, unaware of what was about to unfold. Evelyn began the meeting with a slideshow detailing Nexus's recent achievements. Then, with a casual flick of her remote, she transitioned to a slide displaying the Vortex Holdings transactions. Gasps filled the room as Evelyn methodically walked through the evidence, her tone calm but firm. "These irregularities were brought to my attention several weeks ago," she said. "After a thorough investigation, I discovered that the funds were being funneled into a shell company designed to undermine Nexus Ventures." She turned to Victor, her expression cold. "Victor Hart, as my husband and a supposed partner in life, your betrayal is both personal and professional. I have evidence of your collusion with Daniel and Tessa to orchestrate this scheme. Your actions have not only jeopardized this company, but have also shattered the trust I placed in you." Victor opened his mouth to respond, but Evelyn cut him off. "Before you deny anything, let me be clear. The evidence has already been shared with our legal team. Your actions are indefensible." The aftermath was swift and brutal. Victor was escorted out of the building by security, his public humiliation ensuring that he could never recover his reputation. Tessa was fired, her involvement exposed to the entire company. Daniel faced legal consequences, his career in shambles. Evelyn, though scarred by the experience, emerged stronger. She had not only protected Nexus Ventures, but had also reclaimed control of her life. The betrayal had revealed the cracks in her seemingly perfect world, but it had also reminded her of her own resilience. As she stood in her office overlooking the city skyline, Evelyn allowed herself a moment of reflection. The battle had been won, but the scars remained. And though the web of lies had been unraveled, she couldn't shake the feeling that another threat might be lurking in the shadows. For now, however, she was with her calculated moves dismantling the conspiracy. Evelyn might have expected a sense of closure to wash over her. Instead, the weeks that followed were heavy with unease. The pieces were falling into place, but something felt incomplete. A faint, persistent whisper that there was more to uncover. Evelyn had underestimated the scope of her enemy's cunning before. She wouldn't make the same mistake twice. After Victor's public ousting and Tessa's dismissal, Nexus Ventures entered a phase of quiet reconstruction. Evelyn dedicated herself to restoring the company's integrity, working tirelessly with the board to patch the financial leaks and rebuild trust. Publicly, she was the picture of strength and resolve, but behind the scenes, her personal life was in shambles. Victor had moved out of their home, leaving behind a carefully worded letter that was equal parts apology and self-defense. "I never wanted to hurt you," he wrote, "but you left no room for me to grow. This was my chance to be more than just your shadow." Evelyn read the letter once, before tearing it apart. His words reeked of self-justification, an attempt to frame betrayal as ambition. If Victor thought he could escape her grasp with a few flowery sentences, he was sorely mistaken. Her relationship with Tessa was even more fractured. Despite her sister's pleas for forgiveness, blaming Victor and Daniel for manipulating her, Evelyn couldn't summon any sympathy. "You made your choices," she'd said during their final conversation. "And now, you'll live with the consequences." Even Daniel, who faced the harshest legal repercussions, hadn't completely escaped her orbit. Evelyn had ensured that Nexus Ventures would pursue every avenue to hold him accountable, but her instincts told her he wasn't the mastermind she once thought he was. That's when she realized the faint whisper she'd been ignoring wasn't paranoia. It was her instincts, warning her there was a deeper truth. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Isabel Lane, Victor's mistress and the marketing consultant linked to the Vortex Holdings transactions. After Victor's fall, Isabel had been dismissed from Nexus Ventures and quietly faded from public view. But Evelyn wasn't one to let loose ends dangle. She tracked Isabel down to a modest townhouse on the outskirts of the city. It was a far cry from the luxurious lifestyle she'd seen Isabel enjoying in the photos captured by her investigator. When Isabel answered the door, she looked nothing like the confident woman Evelyn had seen in those images. Her eyes were shadowed and she clutched a cardigan around herself as though bracing for a storm. Isabel dragged Isabel into the kitchen, where she had been evidently falling apart for the previous 2 days, all of her remaining clothes soaked through. "Miss Lane," Evelyn said, her tone measured, I think it's time we talked. Isabel hesitated, but eventually let Evelyn inside. They sat in the cramped living room, a stark contrast to the opulence both women were accustomed to. Isabel avoided eye contact, nervously twisting her hands in her lap. "What do you want?" Isabel finally asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "The truth," Evelyn replied simply. "About Victor. About Vortex Holdings. About all of it." Isabel's laugh was bitter. "The truth? That's rich, coming from someone like you." Evelyn's patience was razor thin, but she forced herself to remain calm. "You don't need to protect him, Isabel. Victor's already ruined. What I want to know is who else was involved." Isabel looked up sharply, her expression a mix of surprise and fear. "What do you mean, who else?" "Don't play coy," Evelyn said, leaning forward. "You think I believe Victor masterminded this alone? He couldn't even balance our household budget without help. Someone else was pulling the strings." For a long moment, Isabel was silent. Then, with a resigned sigh, she said, "You're right. Victor didn't come up with the plan. But he wasn't just a pawn, either. He was ambitious. More than you realized. And he had help." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "From who?" "Not someone you'd expect," Isabel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Victor didn't trust Daniel completely, so he turned to someone else. Someone he thought was smarter, more ruthless." Evelyn's mind raced through the possibilities, but Isabel's next words stopped her cold. "It was someone inside Nexus Ventures. Someone high enough to see every move you made. They knew your strengths and your weaknesses." Evelyn left Isabel's house with a gnawing sense of dread. If Isabel's claim was true, then the betrayal within Nexus Ventures ran even deeper than she had imagined. But who could it be? Most of the senior leadership had been with her since the company's inception. She thought she knew them all inside and out. The answer came from a source Evelyn hadn't considered before: her assistant, Lauren. Loyal, competent, and discreet, Lauren had been Evelyn's right hand for years. If anyone had an intimate understanding of Nexus's inner workings, it was her. But as Evelyn reviewed her interactions with Lauren over the past few months, she noticed small inconsistencies. Lauren had been the one to first mention the strange coincidences in Nexus's finances, but she'd never followed up. She'd also been unusually eager to provide Evelyn with the financial reports, almost as if she wanted Evelyn to find something. Evelyn decided to test her theory. She planted a fake memo in Nexus's internal system, detailing plans for a new acquisition. The memo contained a subtle red flag: a fabricated investment tied to Vortex Holdings. If someone within the company accessed the memo and acted on it, Evelyn would know. Sure enough, 2 days later, Evelyn received a notification from the IT department. The memo had been accessed and forwarded from Lauren's account. Evelyn's heart sank. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Evelyn called Lauren into her office late one evening, long after most employees had gone home. Lauren entered with her usual poise, but Evelyn could see the tension in her posture. "You wanted to see me?" Lauren asked. Evelyn gestured for her to sit, fixing her with a steely gaze. "I want you to tell me about Vortex Holdings." Lauren froze, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," Evelyn said, her voice like ice. "I know you accessed the fake memo I planted. I know you've been feeding information to Victor. And I know you were the one who set up the initial transactions." For a moment, Lauren said nothing. Then, with a bitter laugh, she said, "You always were too smart for your own good." Evelyn's stomach churned. "Why, Lauren? Why would you do this?" Lauren's eyes blazed with resentment. "Because I was tired of being your shadow. I built this company with you, Evelyn. I stayed late, I covered for your mistakes, I kept your secrets. And what did I get in return? A pat on the back and a front row seat to your empire." Evelyn felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. "So you decided to destroy everything we built." Lauren leaned forward, her voice venomous. "You were so obsessed with control, you never saw the cracks forming. I didn't want to destroy the company. I wanted to take it from you." Evelyn's resolve hardened. "Well, you failed, And now you'll face the consequences. The evidence against Lauren was damning, and Evelyn wasted no time in presenting it to the board. Lauren was terminated immediately, her access revoked, and her actions reported to the authorities. The revelation sent shockwaves through Nexus Ventures, but Evelyn framed it as a testament to the company's resilience. Privately, Evelyn mourned the loss of someone she had trusted implicitly. The betrayals had left scars that would take years to heal, but Evelyn knew one thing for certain: she would never let her guard down again. As she sat in her office staring at the city skyline, Evelyn allowed herself a moment of reflection. The web of lies had finally unraveled, but the lessons it left behind were etched into her soul. Trust was a fragile thing, and in the world of power and ambition, betrayal was never far away. With the final betrayal unmasked, Evelyn Hart stood at the summit of her victory, but the view was far from triumphant. Nexus Ventures had been salvaged, the conspirators exposed, and order restored, yet the emotional toll lingered. The web of deception woven so close to her heart had left scars that no amount of professional success could erase. The weeks following Lauren's downfall were a whirlwind of damage control and introspection. Evelyn tightened security measures within Nexus, implementing protocols to prevent similar breaches in the future. She restructured her leadership team, bringing in trusted external advisors to audit every department. But even as the company regained stability, Evelyn couldn't ignore the gnawing sensation that the war wasn't truly over. Evelyn knew the importance of controlling the narrative, especially in the cutthroat corporate world. Publicly, she framed the exposure of Victor, Tessa, Daniel, and Lauren as a testament to her leadership. She spun a tale of vigilance and resilience, ensuring that Nexus's reputation emerged unscathed. Interviews with prominent media outlets highlighted her decisive action to protect the company. "Leadership isn't just about celebrating success," Evelyn said in one interview. "It's about confronting challenges head-on and holding people accountable, no matter how close they are to you." But beneath the polished veneer, Evelyn struggled to reconcile her public persona with the personal cost of the ordeal. The home she once shared with Victor felt hollow, a stark reminder of their shattered trust. The warmth of family gatherings was replaced by a cold silence. Her relationship with Tessa remained fractured beyond repair. One morning, a courier delivered an unmarked envelope to Evelyn's office. Inside was a handwritten note from Victor. "You may have won, but don't think you're untouchable. There's always someone waiting to take your place." The threat was subtle, but Evelyn recognized it for what it was: a parting shot from a man desperate to regain control. She suspected he was bluffing, but Evelyn couldn't afford to dismiss the warning outright. She instructed her legal team to intensify their scrutiny of Victor's activities, ensuring he couldn't resurface to cause further harm. The note also served as a sobering reminder of the precariousness of power. Evelyn had spent years cultivating her empire, but the events of the past months had shown her just how fragile it could be. She resolved to remain vigilant, sharpening her instincts to detect even the faintest whiff of betrayal. Daniel's trial became a spectacle, drawing the attention of both the media and the business world. Evelyn attended every session, her presence a silent assertion of her resolve. The prosecution presented an airtight case, with evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy meticulously documented. During the trial, Daniel attempted to deflect blame onto Victor and Lauren, painting himself as a reluctant participant. His pleas for leniency fell on deaf ears. The judge delivered a harsh sentence, signaling that no one was above the law. Watching Daniel be led away in handcuffs, Evelyn felt a flicker of satisfaction. Justice, at least in this instance, had been served. For Tessa, the consequences were less public but equally severe. Evelyn ensured that her sister's actions were documented in a way that would prevent her from finding work in the corporate world again. It was a painful decision, but Evelyn believed it was necessary to protect the company and herself from future betrayals. In the months that followed, Evelyn began the slow process of healing. She sought solace in moments of solitude, rediscovering hobbies she had long abandoned in the pursuit of success. Gardening became her refuge, a quiet space where she could nurture life and reflect on her own. But the hummingbird in her ears was not usually her copy. She also began therapy, a decision she had resisted for years. Initially skeptical, Evelyn found it liberating to voice her fears and frustrations to someone who had no stake in her life. Through these sessions, she confronted the lingering pain of Victor's betrayal and the deep-seated trust issues it had left behind. One session in particular stayed with her. Her therapist asked, "Do you feel you've truly let go of the anger?" Evelyn hesitated before answering. "No," she admitted. "But maybe that anger is what keeps me sharp." Or, the therapist suggested, "It's what keeps you from moving forward." The words lingered in Evelyn's mind, prompting her to consider what moving forward might truly look like. Just as Evelyn began to feel a sense of normalcy returning to her life, an unexpected revelation surfaced. During a routine audit of Nexus's archival data, a junior analyst uncovered an overlooked document, a contract linking Vortex Holdings to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account holder's name was unfamiliar, but the details suggested another layer to the conspiracy. Evelyn instructed her legal team to investigate discreetly, determined to uncover the truth. The trail led to a retired executive from a rival firm, someone with a long-standing grudge against Nexus Ventures. It became clear that Victor, Daniel, and the others had been pawns in a larger game. This discovery didn't spark anger in Evelyn, it fueled her resolve. She realized that the battle for power and control would never truly end, but she could fortify herself against future threats. Evelyn's journey through betrayal had changed her irrevocably. She was no longer the same woman who had celebrated her 10th wedding anniversary in a house full of lies. She had become someone stronger, more cautious, but also more self-aware. On a brisk autumn morning, Evelyn stood on the terrace of her newly purchased penthouse, overlooking the city she had fought to protect. In her hands was a glass of wine, a small indulgence to mark the start of a new chapter. She didn't toast to her victory. There was no triumph in surviving betrayal. Instead, she toasted to resilience, to the lessons learned, and to the understanding that trust, while fragile, could be rebuilt, not with others, but within herself. As she gazed at the horizon, Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. The shadows of the past still lingered, but they no longer controlled her. She was ready to face whatever came next, knowing she would do so on her terms. Justice had been served, and Evelyn Hart had reclaimed her power, not just over Nexus Ventures, but over her own life.